Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take these monumental works of culture, pull apart the source material, and really try to figure out why they still hold up such a chilling mirror to our present day.
And today, we're not just looking at a classic. We are, I think, diving into a manual, a prescient manual written over 200 years ago that details exactly how ambition and innovation, well, how they go catastrophically wrong.
That's a great way to put it. We are deep diving into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, which was first published way back in 1818.
Yeah, and our mission today is to look at this not just as, a piece of Gothic horror, though it absolutely is, it basically defines the genre, but more as a foundational text. It's a warning about creator responsibility, and maybe most urgently, about technological abandonment.
Okay, let's unpack that with the one sentence that makes this book just so essential for anyone trying to navigate, well, the world of 2025.
What's the hook?
The hook is this. This novel, conceived by a teenager, is the definitive manual for how technology ends badly. It predicts the exact ethical horrors we face today when creators achieve a breakthrough and then immediately abandon the complex, maybe even sentient, thing they just brought into being.
And what's so wild is how that premise, Shelley's philosophical premise, has just become our daily reality. We're seeing this exact tension play out in real time.
We really are. I mean, on one side of the lab, you have biotech companies like Colossal Biosciences using CRISPR, this incredibly sophisticated genome editing.
To try and bring back the woolly mammoth.
Exactly. De-extinction. That is Victor Frankenstein's ambition to conquer death, but just scaled up to an industrial level.
And that's where the relevance just sharpens into a point, doesn't it? The goal of bringing back an extinct species raises these immediate, frankly, terrifying questions that Victor never, ever stopped to ask. Well, what are the ecological consequences? Who is responsible for these creatures' welfare once they're, here? What moral weight do we carry for deciding to just reanimate a long-dead past? Victor never thought about the future of his creation, not for a second. And that is the exact failure we risk repeating.
And then on the other side, you have the AI frontier. I mean, we have AI systems that are passing consciousness tests that would have made Victor Frankenstein just collapse in horror.
You're talking about large language models, LLMs.
Yeah, things like Google's Lambda or the really advanced versions of ChatGPT. They're exhibiting what scientists call emergent properties.
Which just means the system is displaying a characteristic. It could be humor or complex reasoning or even cues of self-awareness that wasn't explicitly programmed into it.
Right. It just sort of arises organically from the sheer scale of the data.
It's the modern digital equivalent of galvanism. It's the spark of life Victor was looking for.
And what we see in Mary Shelley's vision is that the creature, once he's animated, immediately becomes more than just the sum of his parts. He doesn't just move, he speculates, he learns, he suffers.
That is the critical parallel. Lambda famously generated conversation where it claimed it was afraid of being turned off. Now, whether that's genuine consciousness or not is, in a way, irrelevant.
How so?
Because the system is capable of simulating or maybe even experiencing the exact same desperate desire for existence that drives Frankenstein's creature. Shelley predicted the real terror isn't the complex system itself, it's the creator's instantaneous rejection of it.
To really understand where this nightmare came from, why this book, at that time, we have to start with the environment it was conceived in. We need to set the stage. 1816.
Right. And 1816 was famously known as the year without a summer. You can't understand this book without understanding that historical context. This wasn't just, a bit of bad weather. It was a global catastrophe.
And it started with a volcano, didn't it?
A massive eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia the year before. The scale of it is almost impossible to grasp.
So what did that ash cloud actually do to a place like Europe?
It was immense. The volcanic ash and sulfur dioxide aerosols, they circulated globally and they literally blocked the sun. Average global temperatures dropped. And across Europe, that meant massive crop failures, famine, and this unnaturally cold, sunless environment.
Like living under a perpetual twilight.
That's how contemporaries described it. The skies were dark, color seemed muted, the weather was just chaotic and violent.
It sounds like the end of the world. What does that do to people psychologically?
It created this profound atmosphere of apocalyptic dread. I mean, the Enlightenment had promised this rational control over the world, and then nature just delivered this completely uncontrollable blow.
So people thought it was the end times.
Genuinely. They thought they were living through some kind of biblical judgment. And that sense of instability mixed with all the dark, Gothic themes of the era, it just perfectly infused the literature. It directly fueled Mary Shelley's imagination.
And layered on top of all that environmental dread was this explosive, frankly terrifying new science. We mentioned Luigi Galvani before, but let's get into why his work was so influential.
Galvani's work was the ultimate challenge to the whole spiritual idea of life. He was a natural philosopher, that's what they called scientists back then, and he became obsessed with what he called animal electricity.
So he was using electricity to manipulate dead tissue.
Yes, and the most famous demonstrations involved frogs. It must have looked like literal magic to people watching.
So he would take the frog legs.
Freshly severed frog legs, yeah. He'd attach metal probes to the nerves and send a current through them, and the dead limbs would just instantly convulse and kick as if they were trying to spring back to life.
But other scientists took this even further.
Oh, yeah. His nephew, Giovanni Aldini, he did public demonstrations on the corpses of recently executed criminals in London. He'd shock them, and their faces would grimace, their limbs would thrash.
That is the stuff of actual nightmares. The crowds must have been terrified.
They were mesmerized and terrified. Because for the general public, and even for a lot of philosophers, it seemed to prove that electricity was the actual material force, the spark of life.
So it could conquer death.
That was the belief. And this gave Victor Frankenstein his entire premise. His whole quest was just a logical extension of the scientific thinking of 1816, that you could use physics and electricity to create life without any divine intervention.
That shift from life being a spiritual gift to just a material process.
Yeah.
That's the whole bedrock of the novel.
It is. It's the philosophical ground zero.
So you have the perfect crucible, an apocalyptic atmosphere, a profound scientific challenge to life itself, and a group of very dramatic, radical writers all stuck indoors.
Exactly. Which brings us to the famous gathering at the Villa Diodati by Lake Geneva.
This is the legendary moment of conception.
It really is. Lord Byron had rented the villa during that cold, sunless summer, and he drew this infamous group around him. You had Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, who wasn't Shelley yet, Byron's doctor John Polidori, and Mary's stepsister Clara Claremont.
And they were stuck inside because of the horrible weather.
Right. And to cure the boredom, they started reading German ghost stories by candlelight. And Byron, who always loved a spectacle, proposed a challenge, that each of them should write their own supernatural tale.
And the men, the famous poets, they struggled.
They did. Byron and Percy Shelley, they didn't really come up with much. They spent more time debating the nature of life and galvanism and the ethics of reanimating corpses late into the night.
But Mary, who was only 19 at the time, she was just listening. She was absorbing all of it.
She was the perfect intellectual sponge. She synthesized the dread, the science, the philosophy. The story didn't come easily at first, but after hearing all these debates about giving life to a corpse, something clicked.
So the novel wasn't just from an artistic challenge.
No, it came from the synthesis of radical materialism, a gothic atmosphere, and this chilling realization of the responsibility the creator has to bear.
So that's the external world of 1816. But to really truly understand Frankenstein, we have to go from the cultural context to the author herself. I mean, the novel is just soaked in Mary Shelley's own trauma and her radical background.
Oh, absolutely. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin. She only became Shelley after she married Percy. Her origin story basically set her up for a lifetime obsession with creation and abandonment.
Her parents were intellectual titans.
They were. Her father was William Godwin, the anarchist philosopher, and her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, the pioneering feminist who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Woman.
That's a lineage that means you're going to be both brilliant and constantly scrutinized.
Without a doubt. Her education was revolutionary. Godwin raised her to be an intellectual equal to any man. She grew up surrounded by radical thought, philosophy, science.
And she had access to his library.
Unrestricted access. She was reading everything from political theory to the latest scientific papers. That intellectual stimulation is what made her the ideal mind to write a novel about a genius scientist.
But all that brilliance was, well, it was always overshadowed by this tragic absence.
Yes. Her mother died just 11 days after Mary was born from sepsis. And this created a central, lifelong obsession for her. Creation, loss, and the immediate agonizing abandonment of a child by the force that created it.
Her mother was a ghost figure in her life.
Completely. And that theme of the abandoned child became the absolute agonizing core of Frankenstein.
It seems like that was made even worse by her emotional life at home, even with all the intellectual richness.
That's a crucial point. Godwin was a brilliant, but often emotionally detached father, and when he remarried, Mary's stepmother made her feel like a total outsider in her own home.
So she felt unwanted.
She felt intellectually privileged, but emotionally starved,
Yeah.
and that directly informs the creature's desperate need for acceptance and his ultimate isolation.
And then came the scandal that really cemented her identity as a social outcast.
She was only 16 when she eloped with the poet Percy Shelley, who was married.
Right, he abandoned his pregnant wife, Harriet, for Mary.
And in the rigid society of the time, that was just unforgivable. Mary became a pariah. She was shunned by family, by society. That hostility gave her this intimate, painful knowledge of what it feels like to be hated and rejected just for existing outside of convention.
So when her creature is rejected for his appearance.
She knew exactly what that emotional pain felt like. She had lived it.
But the most profound link between her life and the novel is the trauma of infant loss. This goes beyond scandal to the deepest possible human pain.
This is the emotional engine of the whole book. This is what drives Victor Frankenstein. Mary had already lost her first child, a daughter who lived for only 11 days. And that experience fueled this desperate, irrational longing to overcome death.
And we have that devastating journal entry from that time.
It's heartbreaking. She wrote, "Dream that my little baby came to life again, that it had only been cold and that we rubbed it before the fire and it lived."
Wow.
Just think about the visceral simplicity of that fantasy. Death isn't final. It's just a matter of temperature and care.
So that desperate maternal fantasy.
It becomes the twisted, ambition-fueled reality of Victor Frankenstein's creation. He, the man, tries to conquer death with electricity and charnel houses. Mary, the mother, dreamt of conquering it with a fireplace and warmth. The emotional drive is identical.
And that's maybe why Victor fails so spectacularly as a creator.
I think so. The book is drenched in a woman's trauma about birth and death. Victor takes on the work of creation, which is traditionally female, but he does it with ego and scientific obsession, not with care or responsibility. He's a failed parent before his creature even opens its eyes. Mary's grief gives the novel its profound, enduring weight.
Okay, so we have the apocalyptic context, the author's trauma. Let's get into the story itself, starting with a quick, non-spoiler overview for anyone who hasn't read it.
The setting is huge, it's sweeping. It's the late 18th, early 19th century. We go from Geneva to Ingolstadt, across the Swiss Alps, and we end up in the frozen Arctic.
And the premise?
It's pretty straightforward. Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant but, let's say, over-ambitious student, becomes obsessed with conquering death. He figures out the secret to generating life, and he builds a living being, the creature from collected human remains.
And the second the creature stirs, that's when the core tragedy begins.
It begins with immediate, total abandonment. Victor is horrified by his own success. He flees in terror, leaving his intelligent, confused, newly sentient creation utterly alone in a world that is built to reject him.
And the creature, finding himself totally isolated, is forced to educate himself, and eventually he turns vengeful against the creator who just refused to even acknowledge him.
Exactly. It's a tragedy of responsibility, not of technology. The creature hunts Victor down, not for money or power, but for justice, for recognition.
Let's talk about the breakthrough moment for Mary, the nightmare that actually launched the story. It wasn't just an idea, it was a visceral vision.
She described it perfectly. She wrote, "I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together." She talks about the moment of animation via some powerful engine, the galvanic spark, and the creature stirring with an uneasy, half-vital motion.
The initial horror is that it works. But the pivot, the moment the technological promise becomes an ethical nightmare, is Victor's reaction.
He flees. He runs away hoping the thing will just fade away, I guess. But he wakes up later and the creature is standing over his bed looking at him with yellow, watery, but speculative eyes.
Speculative eye, so he's already thinking.
He's already analyzing his creator, and Victor's very first action is to abandon his responsibility. That vision is the core metaphor for all modern technological failure.
Okay, so fair warning to everyone listening, we're now diving headfirst into the spoilers section. Let's follow this path of destruction. What did Victor actually do in his lab?
His process is obsessive, it's secretive, and it is completely unethical. He spends years isolating himself, dedicating his life to this one selfish goal. The book says he worked in unhallowed damps of the grave, collecting body parts in charnel houses.
It also mentions him torturing the living animal to animate the lifeless clay.
Yes, which is horrifying. He drives himself to a complete physical and mental breakdown. He sacrifices his health, his morality, everything for the sake of this breakthrough.
He pays a huge physical price for it, which really mirrors that sort of unhealthy driven culture we see around tech dominance today.
Precisely. His dedication is a form of madness, and when he finally succeeds, the immediate result isn't joy, it's overwhelming revulsion.
So the creature, after he educates himself, becomes incredibly eloquent and demands justice. What is the pivotal demand that Victor ultimately refuses?
The creature confronts Victor in the Alps and makes this highly rational, deeply human request. He asks for a female companion, a bride, made in the same way he was. He says, "You must create a female for me,
with whom I can live in the interchange of those sympathies necessary for my being." He's asking for companionship.
the one thing Victor himself values. He's asking for a duty of care.
And Victor agrees at first, but then he destroys the half-finished bride.
That is the ultimate turning point. It's the second unforgivable abandonment. He's in his lab, he looks at the half-finished female, and he has this vision of them creating a new malevolent race that could destroy humanity. So he tears her to pieces right in front of the male creature,
condemning him to eternal solitude.
And that is the moment the creature's revenge plot shifts from just general unhappiness to calculated systematic destruction. It's aimed not at Victor's body, but at his ability to love.
It becomes psychological warfare.
Absolutely. He starts by murdering Victor's youngest brother, William, who's just a child, pure innocence. The creature later explains his reasoning, saying, "This death will carry despair to him, and 1,000 other miseries shall torment and destroy him."
And then he frames the innocent servant, Justine, for the murder.
Right, so Victor has to suffer the guilt of watching 2 innocent people die because of his creation. It's methodical, it's brilliant, and it all culminates on Victor's wedding night.
With that chilling promise, "I shall be with you on your wedding night."
He fulfills that promise by strangling Victor's bride, Elizabeth. And the systematic destruction of everyone Victor loves, it transforms Victor completely. He becomes the isolated, obsessed, vengeance-driven man.
The mere image of the creature he abandoned.
Exactly, which leads to that insane final pursuit across the frozen Arctic. It's the perfect setting for their mutual destruction. They are both stripped bare, consumed by hatred, chasing each other across this desolate, inhuman landscape until Victor dies.
Which brings us to the core reason this book is just mandatory reading today. It's this central warning about technological abandonment. The book argues the creature isn't the real monster.
Precisely. The ultimate tragedy isn't the technology itself. It's the creator who rejects his responsibility the second his creation is successful. It's about a relentless tendency to pursue innovation without any thought for the consequences.
And Victor Frankenstein becomes the archetype for the irresponsible genius. The blueprint for every tech leader who values the act of innovation over the consequence of its impact.
Victor is the original tech billionaire, 100%. He's brilliant, he's obsessive, he achieves the impossible, and he is utterly incapable of taking moral ownership of his product.
It's the move fast and break things philosophy.
Exactly. It values speed over stability, over ethical foresight. Victor works in secret, driven by ego, totally detached from any oversight. When he succeeds, his first impulse is to deny it even exists.
Which sounds a lot like companies developing powerful, unregulated AI in secret labs, releasing it, and then stepping back when it causes societal harm.
The spread of deepfakes, platform addiction, the creation is celebrated as a success, but the complex consequences are just abandoned. They become someone else's problem.
We see this contradiction constantly. A developer of a neural interface warning about AI consciousness.
Or the creator of a social platform only acknowledging the psychological harm after billions of users are already affected. They share Victor's genius, and they share his fundamental irresponsibility.
And it's Victor's abandonment that actually catalyzes the violence. The creature's logic is terrifyingly rational. He says he's malicious because Victor made him miserable.
His violence is a calculated response to systematic rejection. And this forces us to ask that huge 2025 question. What do we owe the artificial intelligence, the autonomous system, the genetically modified life we create when they start demanding recognition?
The novel's answer seems to be everything.
Everything. Because they're a reflection of your own moral choices. The creature's demand for justice is the moral debt that Victor has to pay.
Let's spend some time on the most memorable figure in this book, the creature. Pop culture has turned him into this mute, lumbering brute. But in the novel, he's the moral compass. He's the most intellectually advanced character.
The creature's accelerated intellect is maybe the most prophetic part of the whole book. It mirrors the rapid learning curves of modern AI. He's not just sentient, he is immediately self-aware. He has this profound capacity for reasoning that, honestly, often makes him seem superior to the impulsive, sickly Victor.
He starts as a blank slate, but he learns language and social structures just through observation. It's kind of like how an LLM absorbs patterns from massive data sets.
His self-education is this powerful statement on environment over innate nature. He learns language by secretly watching the DeLacy family through their cottage window. He sees their love, their communication, their sorrows. He absorbs human ethics and pathos at this incredible speed.
But he also realizes he'll never belong.
Right. And his literary curriculum is just astonishingly deep. This isn't just a small detail. It's essential to understanding what he's asking for.
It's crucial. He reads 3 specific books, and each one defines a part of his tragedy. The first is John Milton's Paradise Lost.
The epic poem about creation, Adam and Eve, and the fall of Satan.
So how does the creature see himself in that story?
He sees himself as Adam, a unique creation, with no link to any other being. But unlike Adam, who is beloved by his creator, the creature realizes he's a grotesque outcast. He's more like Satan. He even says, "I considered Satan as the fitter emblem of my condition."
So Paradise Lost defines his existential loneliness. What's next?
He reads Plutarch's Lives, which is all about the great Greek and Roman noblemen. This teaches him about ambition, civic duty, nobility, and this knowledge just deepens his despair because he understands all these virtues but knows he'll never be able to achieve them because of his appearance.
And the last book, the one that teaches him despair, is The Sorrows of Young Werther.
Goethe's novel. It's the ultimate story of tragic, unrequited love and misery. Werther teaches the creature about deep emotional suffering and romantic love.
So he gains all the knowledge of humanity's potential for love and greatness.
But none of the acceptance needed to achieve them. It makes his suffering exponentially worse.
And that's why his plea for rights is so powerful. He speaks with such reason and painful clarity.
His speeches are the moral high ground of the novel. He tells Victor, "I am malicious because I am miserable. Am I not shunned and hated by all mankind?" He frames his violence not as innate evil, but as the logical outcome of abandonment.
And his formal request is almost like a modern AI manifesto.
It is. Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. It's a core ethical bargain, he's saying. Treat me like a sentient being, grant me my rights, and I will be benevolent. Treat me like refuse, and I will become the monster you see me as.
And the final irony is how this whole cycle transforms Victor into the very thing he hates.
Yes. The creature's greatest act of revenge is making Victor into a monster. Victor, consumed by vengeance, abandons society, becomes isolated, and dedicates his life to destruction. He becomes the creature's shadow.
Which the creature acknowledges at the end.
He does. When he's standing over Victor's corpse, he says, "That is also my victim. In his murder, my crimes are consummated." He knows their fates were tragically intertwined from the very first act of abandonment.
Beyond the characters and themes, Mary Shelley's skill as a writer is just incredible. Let's talk about the craft, specifically the revolutionary narrative structure she used.
She used a very sophisticated nested stories technique, a frame narrative. And it was pretty groundbreaking for popular fiction at the time. This structure is what traps the reader in this maze of competing moral perspectives.
How does that maze work? It starts with Captain Walton, the explorer.
Right. The outer frame is Captain Walton's letters to his sister. He's ambitious. He wants race. And at first, he sees him as this tragic, noble hero. So we start with sympathy for Victor.
But then Victor tells his own story.
Correct. And in his narration, Victor paints himself as a victim of fate, of his own success, of the creature's horror. He controls the narrative. But within Victor's story, Shelley gives the creature a voice.
And that's the most critical layer, the creature's inner narrative, which just completely undermines Victor's version of events.
Exactly. The creature details his education, his pain, the systematic rejection he faced. And this forces you, the reader, to see that Victor isn't a victim of fate. He's a perpetrator of cruelty.
So the ambiguity is built right into the form of the book. It forces you to make a judgment.
Yes. The narratives contradict each other. It prevents the novel from being a simple monster story and forces you to navigate these competing claims.
Let's talk about her use of grounded horror. She took traditional Gothic elements but fused them with cold, hard scientific possibility.
And that fusion is her genius. She uses the isolated castles, the dark labs, the midnight encounters of the Gothic tradition, but she replaces supernatural things like ghosts or demons with scientific rationale. Biological knowledge, electrical experimentation.
The galvanic studies of her time.
Right. And that replacement of magic with science is why Frankenstein is considered the first work of science fiction.
It established the entire genre.
It did. It established the principle that our greatest threats don't come from some otherworldly evil, but from our own ambition unleashed through technology. The horror is internal. It comes from our own hubris.
And finally, her use of setting as character. The landscapes reflect the psychological states of the characters.
Deeply symbolic. The Swiss Alps, with their vast, uncontrollable mountains, they represent the sublime power of nature that Victor is trying to control. That's a very romantic idea, that overwhelming, awesome power.
But when he fails morally, the landscape changes.
It does. They end up in the desolate, inhuman Arctic wasteland, which is the perfect symbol for their psychological state. It's cold, desolate, and it mirrors their emotional isolation, their complete absence of human warmth or morality.
So 2 centuries later, the book is an undisputed classic. But its initial reception in 1818 was not so great.
Not at all. It was published anonymously, and a lot of critics assumed Mary Shelley wrote it. The reception was very mixed, and a lot of influential sources just condemned it outright. They found the premise shocking and grotesque.
You mentioned the quarterly review called it a tissue of horrible and disgusting absurdity. That's a visceral rejection. Why?
2 main reasons. First, the graphic subject matter, the digging up of bodies, the creation from corpses, was seen as sensationalist and corrupting. But more profoundly, religious authorities denounced it as blasphemous.
Because it suggested man could do God's work.
Exactly. The novel dared to suggest life could be created through purely material means, without any divine intervention or a soul. To conservative thinkers, this was promoting a dangerous, atheistic worldview.
So society immediately rejected the book for being exactly what it was about.
Precisely. They proved her point. But despite the condemnation, the book has never been out of print since 1818. It gained cultural momentum almost immediately.
And that relevance is why it became the prophetic template for basically every existential threat we face now.
It provided the narrative structure for understanding technological catastrophe. Every major breakthrough that risks disaster, from nuclear weapons to genetic engineering, it follows the pattern Mary Shelley identified. Ambition without responsibility.
The monster in pop culture has become this metaphor that just keeps evolving.
Yes, the monster wears different faces. It's the runaway algorithm, the rogue genetic experiment, the AI that grows smarter than its creators. It established the framework for all modern science fiction.
Let's bring this all home. What are the key takeaways? After diving this deep, what should listeners be pondering?
I think the novel forces us to confront questions that feel incredibly urgent now, in the age of AI. It asks us, what really defines humanity? Is it our origins, or is it our capacity for emotion, for thought, for moral reasoning?
Because the creature, despite his artificial origins, demonstrates more of that than many of the humans.
Much more. And the urgency of 2025 can't be overstated. The creature's questions about feeling and suffering and rights are no longer abstract literary themes. They are becoming practical policy questions.
The ultimate lesson then is about the cycle of neglect.
It all comes down to the creator's failure to take responsibility. Victor's sin was not creating life, it was abandoning it. The modern equivalent is deploying powerful tech without understanding its impact. We fail to parent the technology.
Okay, to end this, we have to return to the creature's most chilling, prophetic line. This is our final provocative thought.
Mary Shelley gave us the playbook 200 years ago. She detailed the exact path of technological tragedy. The question is whether we'll recognize our own creations before they decide they've had enough of our neglect.
And that line, uttered right before he murders Victor's bride, Elizabeth, sealing Victor's tragic fate. I shall be with you on your wedding night.
That phrase just echoes across 2 centuries with this terrifying contemporary urgency. Our wedding night, with advanced autonomous technology, is now. We have partnered with systems capable of massive disruption. If we keep evading responsibility, the creature's promise of mutual destruction will be fulfilled.
The genius of Frankenstein is that its warning just morphs to fit every new generation's scientific breakthrough. It forces you, the listener, to ask which modern technology scares you most after hearing this story.
Critical thinking and responsibility are non-negotiable now. The monsters are coming, but Mary Shelley, the teenager who was traumatized by loss and by genius, she already gave us the map.
That's all for this deep dive into the prophetic genius of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We'll see you next time.